100 mysteries that science has explained. Fall asleep to science. There was a time when the world was filled with quiet mysteries. The moon's pull on the sea, the flicker of lightning across a summer sky, the gentle glow of fireflies on a still night. All were once considered divine, magical, or unknowable. For thousands of years, people whispered explanations that comforted them, stories of gods and spirits, tales of fate and wonder. But over time, curiosity began to replace superstition. Quietly, through centuries of patient observation, science began to lift the veil. This is not a story of discovery told with excitement or urgency. It is a calm walk through the corridors of understanding, one where every mystery slowly unfolds under the soft light of reason. As you listen, you'll drift through the long history of human thought, from the trembling of atoms to the birth of stars, from the invisible workings of the brain to the gentle rhythm of the tides. Each mystery we once feared or marveled at is now part of a great, quiet order, an intricate clockwork that turns in silence. There are no surprises here, no suspense, only the slow realization that everything, even the most magical things, can be understood. So as night settles and your mind begins to slow, allow these explained mysteries to become the background hum of thought. Let them remind you that the world, though vast, is no longer unknown, and that knowledge, in its gentlest form, can be the softest lullaby of all. If this quiet journey through science helps your thoughts unwind, you can stay with us for many more nights of calm discovery. Subscribe to this channel so you can return whenever your mind needs rest. You can also leave a comment sharing which mystery soothed you most tonight. I read them all. And if this peaceful drift through understanding helped you feel even a little calmer, a simple like helps more listeners find us. Thank you for being here and for letting science lull you gently to sleep. The calm order of weather long before barometers, satellites, and scientific names, people looked at the changing sky with a mixture of wonder and fear. Clouds gathered like armies across the horizon. Lightning traced its silent lines through the dark, and thunder rolled over the hills with the weight of something unknown. For many, these shifting patterns were messages from gods or moods of unseen forces. Each gust of wind or drop of rain carried meaning. Today, what was once divine has become a study of movement, balance, and rhythm, the quiet order of weather. The atmosphere above the earth is not still. It moves, breathes, and flows like a living ocean made of air. Invisible currents rise and fall in slow exchanges, carrying warmth from the equator toward the poles and cool air in return. These motions are guided by the rotation of the planet, by sunlight, and by the weight of air itself. Every storm that forms, every gentle drizzle that falls on fields, follows this same patient choreography. In the earliest attempts to understand weather, observation came before measurement. Farmers noticed how certain winds carried rain, how the shape of clouds predicted change, and how the smell of the air could foretell storms. Over generations, these patterns became proverbs, fragments of memory passed down by word of mouth. Only later did science reveal the steady mathematics hidden beneath the sayings. The sky was not unpredictable. It was orderly if watched long enough. Each cloud that floats above us forms when invisible vapor cools and condenses. Tiny droplets gather around microscopic dust, reflecting light in ways that make the sky endlessly varied. A cumulus cloud, with its soft towers and bright edges, can drift for hours without meaning much at all. Simply a trace of warm air rising and cooling again. To know this does not make the sky less beautiful. It only softens its mystery. Lightning, which once terrified entire villages, is a brief bridge of balance. It forms when the separation of electric charge between clouds and earth becomes too great to sustain. In a fraction of a second, the imbalance corrects itself, releasing light, sound, and a faint smell of ozone. Thunder is only air expanding and contracting in response. To ancient eyes it was anger. To modern understanding it is symmetry restored. Rain, too, follows this patient order. Droplets begin as invisible vapor, lifted by warmth, then cooled until they merge and fall. The sound of rain on rooftops, once feared as a sign of divine displeasure, now marks the rhythm of renewal. The same water that fell on ancient fields returns again and again, traveling the endless circuit of evaporation, condensation, and return. The world drinks, exhales, and waits. The wind, which shapes deserts and carries seeds across oceans, arises from simple difference. One region warm, another cool. Air moves to restore balance, always seeking equality. There is no urgency in it, only the steady pressure of nature seeking calm. A breeze over a quiet plain or the swirl of a distant cyclone both obey the same unseen arithmetic. Weather, in its calm and its chaos, is never truly random. Even storms that seem violent follow rules written in temperature, humidity, and motion. Scientists once tried to predict every turn of wind, but the system proved too complex for exact foresight. Small changes led to great differences, the butterfly effect as it came to be known. Yet even within this unpredictability, there remains order. The laws hold. The sky follows patterns, even when the human eye cannot see them. At sunset, as the last warmth leaves the air, colors deepen. Light, scattered by particles, stretches into red and gold. The same physics that bends light through a prism paints the horizon with fire each evening. There is no magic, only air, light, and the quiet mathematics of wavelength. But the knowing does not diminish the view. It only brings a gentle peace, the comfort of understanding what once was mystery. For those who lived centuries before this knowledge, the weather was a form of conversation with the divine. Rain was mercy, drought was punishment, thunder was warning. Yet, in the patient unfolding of science, these fears became patterns. The sky, once a storyteller of gods, became a soft and predictable companion. Its moods were not messages, but the natural breath of a living planet. And so, to watch clouds pass or listen to rain is to witness balance at work. The world does not rage, it adjusts. The wind does not wander, it seeks equilibrium. Every storm ends not because of grace, but because the scales of air and temperature have found their middle again. The calm that follows is not silence after anger. It is the quiet satisfaction of nature restored to balance. When the night arrives and the air cools, the atmosphere rests. The motions continue, invisible and unhurried. Above the stillness of sleeping cities and forests, layers of air move in slow procession. They do not rush. They drift, carrying traces of the day toward the horizon. The world sleeps beneath a breathing sky, wrapped in the same calm that has always been there. The patient, predictable rhythm of the weather. The shifting earth. For as long as people have walked across the land, they have believed the ground beneath them was fixed, eternal, and unmoving. Mountains seemed permanent, valleys unchanging, and plains endless. Yet beneath the calm surface, the earth has always been in motion, quietly, slowly, invisibly. Long before science could measure the tremor of rock or the slow drift of continents, people sensed that the world occasionally stirred. The ground shuddered, the sea retreated and returned, or a mountain appeared where there had been none. These moments were once seen as divine interruptions. Today, they are known as the natural breathing of a restless planet. The solid crust of the earth is not one continuous shell, but a mosaic of plates, vast slabs of rock that float upon the molten layer beneath. They move only a few centimeters each year, slower than the growth of fingernails, Yet over ages their steady motion reshapes the face of the planet. This discovery, called plate tectonics, gave quiet meaning to countless ancient mysteries. The similarity between distant coastlines, the rise of mountain ranges, and the pattern of earthquakes all found their explanation in this patient drift. Millions of years ago, every continent was joined as one. The supercontinent, known as Pangaea, slowly fractured and drifted apart. Where it split, oceans formed. Where plates collided, mountains rose. The Himalayas, vast and unmoving to the human eye, are in truth still growing, pushed upward each year as India presses into Asia. What seems like stillness is motion too slow for a single lifetime to notice. Beneath the continents, molten rock moves in gentle convection. Warm material rises from deep within the mantle, cools as it nears the crust, and then sinks again. This slow churning carries the plates along, like icebergs on an unseen current. It is not violent, but deliberate, the slowest dance imaginable, shaping the surface of the world grain by grain, inch by inch. When the strain between plates becomes too great, it releases suddenly. The ground trembles, sometimes imperceptibly, sometimes enough to topple cities. An earthquake is not an act of anger, but of balance. It is the earth adjusting its weight, releasing stored tension, returning to stillness. Beneath the surface, rocks grind and slide, finding new equilibrium. The trembling passes, the ground settles, and for another long moment in geologic time, the planet rests. Volcanoes, too, are expressions of this same slow adjustment. Deep beneath them, pressure builds as molten rock collects in chambers. When the weight above can no longer contain it, the magma finds release, rising through cracks to spill across the surface. What appears to us as chaos is, in truth, a simple exchange. Material from the interior making its way outward, cooling, hardening, becoming land again. Islands are born this way, mountains rise from the sea, and new soil is formed from fire. There is a strange calm in knowing that even destruction serves a larger rhythm. When lava hardens, it creates fertile ground. When an earthquake shifts the landscape, rivers change course, valleys deepen, and the planet renews itself. The earth is not breaking. It is becoming. Over millions of years, continents drift, collide, and separate again. Each motion, each fracture, follows a pattern as old as the world itself. The layers of rock beneath our feet hold the memory of these movements. Each stratum marks a moment, an ocean bed turned to stone, a volcanic plain buried beneath sand, a forest compressed into coal. To read these layers is to trace time itself. Geologists measure the tilt and fold of rock, the fossilized remains caught between layers, the mineral veins that mark ancient flows. What they find is not the story of chaos, but of persistence. The planet has been remade countless times, and yet its processes remain the same. Even erosion, which seems so gentle, is part of this ceaseless motion. Rain falls, rivers carve, wind carries grains of sand from one place to another. Mountains wear down, plains rise, and sediment builds new ground elsewhere. Nothing on earth is still. The illusion of permanence is only the scale of our vision, too short, too fleeting to notice the quiet shifting beneath. For most of human history, the trembling of the ground inspired reverence and fear. Myths were woven around these events, the anger of deities, the punishment of spirits, or the movement of great beasts below. Temples were built on sacred faults, offerings made to calm the earth. Yet, in the patient gaze of modern study, these beliefs gave way to patterns and measurements. The world was not temperamental, only dynamic. The same motions that once destroyed cities also formed them, long before any human stood upon them. Across the planet, evidence of this slow rearrangement can be found everywhere. Fossils of sea creatures lie high in the Andes. Smooth stones mark where glaciers once flowed. Ancient coral reefs are buried deep beneath deserts. The continents themselves bear the record of a long, unbroken sequence of drift and renewal. Even now, Africa is slowly splitting along the Great Rift Valley. In millions of years, a new ocean will form there. The process has already begun, unnoticed by most, but steady and sure. At the smallest scale, the same principles apply. Rocks crack, soil shifts, and minerals crystallize. The shapes of coastlines, the height of hills, even the direction of a river are all temporary expressions of movement. The earth is never the same from one moment to the next, though the changes are too subtle for the eye to see. To understand this is to find peace in impermanence, to know that change in nature is the only constant, and that even stone is part of a slow, unending flow. As night falls, and the world seems quiet, this great motion continues unseen. Beneath fields, cities, and oceans, the crust of the earth drifts on its molten sea. Mountains rise and erode, continents drift apart, and deep beneath, new crust forms in the dark. Nothing rushes, nothing waits. The planet simply moves, as it always has, turning quietly in the vastness of space. Its restlessness disguised as stillness, its patience infinite. The flow of rivers have always seemed alive. They move, they speak, and they carve their way through the world with a patience that outlasts everything built beside them. To early civilizations, rivers were gods, spirits, or ancestors. They gave life to crops, carried boats between distant lands, and offered water to every living thing. Their courses appeared eternal. Yet every bend, every ripple, every quiet pool is part of a long and steady transformation that never ends. A river begins with something small, a single drop of rain falling on a hillside. That drop joins others, gathering in tiny rivulets, then in streams that merge and grow. The flow deepens, guided by gravity and the shape of the land. From mountain snowmelt to hidden springs, rivers are born wherever water finds a downward path. Their motion may seem simple, yet every curve follows laws that have shaped continents. As water travels, it carries the memory of the places it touches. Minerals dissolve into it, grains of sand drift along its bed, and fragments of stone are worn into smoothness. With time, the river deepens its channel, cutting through soil and rock alike. Valleys appear where none existed before. What begins as erosion becomes architecture, the slow construction of landscapes over thousands of years. The Nile, the Ganges, the Mississippi, the Yangtze each has its own rhythm, shaped by distance, rainfall, and time. To ancient people, these rivers were more than geography. They were the pulse of the world. Crops grew according to their floods. Cities rose along their banks. Trade, faith, and culture flowed with them. Yet the same waters that gave life also took it away. Floods came quietly, sometimes with warning, sometimes without. What once was seen as divine punishment is now understood as part of the river's long and necessary cycle of renewal. When a river floods, it spills beyond its boundaries, carrying fine silt and nutrients across the plain. When the water retreats, it leaves behind fertile soil, renewing what it once seemed to destroy. The earliest farmers learned this rhythm instinctively. They planted after the floods, harvested before the next, and built their lives around a calendar written in water. Even today, that pattern continues in subtler ways. Rain swells rivers, fields drink deeply, and nature restores what it takes away. Every river moves toward an end, though it never truly finishes. Some reach the sea, their waters blending with salt and tide. Others disappear into sand or sink into underground channels. Yet even when a river vanishes, its influence remains. the path it carved, the soil it carried, the ecosystems it nourished. The idea of a dead river is an illusion. The water may leave, but its memory remains in the shape of the land. The flow of a river is not constant. It slows where the land flattens and quickens through narrow gorges. In each stretch, the water behaves differently, calm in some places, restless in others. Over centuries, meanders form, looping curves that shift slowly downstream. One bend erodes while another fills, creating oxbow lakes and wetlands. These quiet places, often overlooked, are sanctuaries for countless forms of life. The stillness they offer is part of the river's balance, a pause between movements. The sound of a river at night carries a kind of timelessness. It has no beginning and no end, just the steady murmur of motion. The same sound echoed through ancient valleys when mammoths walked the plains, when early humans built their first shelters, and when empires rose and fell along its banks. To listen to it is to hear the persistence of the earth itself, the slow continuity that ignores all human scales of time. Science sees in rivers a record of change. The sediments they carry settle in layers, preserving the history of climates and ages long gone. Cores drilled from ancient deltas reveal patterns of drought, flood, and renewal stretching back millions of years. Through these layers, scientists can read how the planet once breathed, the rhythm of rainfall, the tilt of continents, the retreat and return of oceans. The river becomes not just a flow of water, but a flowing archive. Yet, for all its scientific clarity, there remains something gentle about a river's inevitability. It moves not with urgency but with purpose. It reshapes without violence. The mightiest canyon began as a small stream, working grain by grain. The Grand Canyon itself is the patient result of one river's quiet determination. A masterpiece formed not by force, but by persistence over unimaginable time. When rivers meet the sea, the boundary is not abrupt. Fresh water mingles with salt, forming estuaries where tides breathe in and out. Here, the ocean's vastness meets the river's familiarity. It is a place of exchange, where nutrients spread, where life multiplies, where everything softens. The river's long journey ends not in disappearance but in union, its purpose fulfilled as it becomes part of something larger. At night, rivers reflect the faint light of stars. They move beneath the stillness of the sky, following the same routes they have followed for centuries. In their depths, unseen currents carry the memory of mountains, forests, and rain clouds. Nothing is lost. Every drop that reaches the sea will one day rise again as mist, drift across the world, and fall once more as rain. The journey is endless, circular, and serene. To watch a river is to see the earth in motion, not in haste, but in patience. Its course may shift, its color may change, but its nature remains constant, to move, to renew, to connect. In every drop, the story of the planet continues, calm and uninterrupted. And as it flows through valleys, beneath bridges, and past sleeping towns, the river keeps its quiet promise, to carry on untroubled until time itself comes to rest. The light of the sky has always been a mirror for human wonder. For most of history, its light seemed alive, a realm of gods, spirits, or distant fires beyond reach. People lifted their eyes at dawn and dusk and felt something both vast and intimate. The light that filled the air changed by the hour, softening and deepening with the turning of the earth. It felt personal even though it was not. Science, over time, would find the quiet truth behind this glow, revealing not magic but motion. The slow, steady language of light itself. The sun, which once inspired prayer and fear, is a star. It burns not with flame but with fusion, the joining of atoms that releases endless energy. Deep within its core, hydrogen becomes helium in a process that has continued for billions of years. The heat and light produce their travel outward, crossing space at the speed of light, reaching Earth after a journey of about 8 minutes. When it arrives, it touches everything: stone, leaf, water, and air, and becomes the source of all visible brightness in our world. The sky's color, so familiar and simple, is the result of scattering. Sunlight is made of many colors, each with its own wavelength. When it enters the atmosphere, the shorter blue wavelengths scatter in all directions, filling the air with soft diffusion. That scattering is what makes the sky appear blue during the day. It is not a substance or a veil, but the interaction of light and air, a constant and invisible process happening above every horizon. As the sun lowers, light passes through a thicker layer of the atmosphere. The blue and violet scatter away, leaving behind the longer wavelengths of orange and red. This is why sunsets and dawns glow with warmth. The same physics governs every sunrise seen by shepherds, sailors, or city dwellers. A quiet geometry repeated endlessly across the planet. The earth turns, the light bends, and color fills the sky in gentle rhythm. Clouds, too, shape how we see the sky's light. Their whiteness is not a reflection of purity, but of structure. Billions of tiny droplets scatter all wavelengths evenly, blending colors into a uniform pale brightness. When clouds grow thick, they block sunlight and dim the world below, turning the day gray and still. When they thin, beams of light break through in columns, an effect once thought to be divine, now understood as simple diffraction through gaps in vapor. The beauty remains unchanged, even when explained. Rainbows appear when sunlight meets moisture. Each droplet acts as a tiny prism, bending light and splitting it into its colors. The order never varies: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. To early eyes, the rainbow was a message, a bridge between the heavens and earth. To science, it is a pattern of angles, light entering, reflecting once inside the droplet, and emerging refracted. The rainbow is always a circle, though we see only half from the ground. Above the clouds, from the air, it forms a complete ring, glowing silently in the mist. At night, the sun's light does not vanish. It travels further, reflected by the moon, scattered by the atmosphere, or refracted through distant dust. The moon itself shines not by its own energy but by borrowed light. Its gray plains and craters mirror sunlight toward Earth, softening it into silver. Through this reflection, the cycle of day and night becomes seamless, the same light continuing its quiet journey in different forms. Stars, seen against the darkness, are reminders of how far light can travel. Some of the points we see tonight began their journey before humans existed. The faint glow of the Milky Way, once thought to be a single cloudy band, is the combined light of billions of stars, blurred together across vast distance. Through the calm lens of understanding, even the night sky becomes a record of time, a gallery of light from ages past, still arriving long after its sources have changed or faded. When storms approach, lightning briefly illuminates the sky from within. For a moment, the clouds seem alive with light, as if the heavens are breathing. Yet this too is a pattern, an electrical balance corrected by discharge. Even in its suddenness, lightning obeys order. Each flash is followed by calm, each burst by silence. The same rule applies to the aurora, those curtains of color that drift near the poles. They occur when charged particles from the sun meet Earth's magnetic field, guided into the atmosphere where they glow in green and pink veils. What once felt like spirits dancing is now known as energy finding peace. Every day, without sound or effort, light travels across the earth, painting the sky with constant transformation. Morning brings cool brightness. Noon flattens color into clarity. Evening gathers warmth into fading gold. The cycle repeats endlessly. The science behind it is not a story of drama, but of precision, wavelengths, particles, and the unchanging speed of light. Yet within this precision lies a kind of serenity. The same laws that govern the sun's heat also create the soft colors that lull us at dusk. Light defines the way we see, but it also defines the passage of time. The turning of the earth, the length of shadows, the angle of illumination, all are quiet measurements of existence. Every sunrise is both a beginning and a continuation. Every sunset, both an end and a reminder. Through light, the planet keeps time, and through understanding, we learn that time itself is another form of illumination. A constant presence, always moving, always calm. As night deepens and the stars become clearer, the air grows still. The light that once filled the sky has not disappeared. It has only shifted, waiting for morning. Above sleeping cities and dark forests, particles still scatter faintly, giving the sky its dim glow. The quiet blue of twilight, the last reflection of day, fades into gentle black. The earth turns, light follows, and the balance continues. An endless, peaceful rhythm between shadow and illumination. The whisper of the seasons, the earth moves in silence. Its rotation, its orbit, its slow lean through space all happen without sound or sensation. Yet these quiet motions shape everything that lives upon it. The cycle of seasons, winter's stillness, spring's awakening, summer's warmth, and autumn's fading light, has guided life for millions of years. It is one of the planet's simplest patterns, yet it governs migration, harvest, and the rhythm of existence itself. For most of human history, people saw these changes as divine gifts or punishments. Only later did science reveal that the secret lies not in the heavens' moods, but in the Earth's gentle tilt. The planet is not upright as it circles the sun. It leans by about 23.5 degrees. That small inclination determines everything. As Earth travels its yearly path, different parts receive more or less sunlight. The northern and southern hemispheres take turns facing the sun more directly. When one enjoys long, warm days, the other rests under shorter, cooler ones. This steady exchange creates the seasons. Not sudden, not chaotic, but a precise and predictable pattern repeated endlessly through time. In ancient times, people tracked these changes through observation. Shadows lengthened and shortened with the sun's path. The rising points of sunrise shifted along the horizon. Early astronomers, without instruments, built stone markers to follow these movements, circles and alignments that predicted solstices and equinoxes. Their lives depended on this knowledge. Crops had to be planted and harvested according to the sky's schedule. In this way, the heavens became a calendar written in light and shadow. Spring arrives not by command but by gradual balance. The air warms, the sun climbs higher each day, and the ground softens. Snow melts into rivers, trees awaken, and dormant seeds stir beneath the soil. The process is not sudden. It unfolds quietly, 1 degree at a time. To see it is to witness the planet adjusting itself, tilting gently toward light after months of rest. Each change carries the memory of the last, a soft continuation rather than a beginning. Summer follows, bringing steadiness. The sun's path stretches long across the sky, and the land holds its warmth through the night. Plants grow at their fullest, and animals thrive in abundance. Yet even at its height, summer is temporary. The very tilt that brought its light also ensures its decline. Slowly, the days begin to shorten. The sun sinks a little lower. The world prepares for rest again, even as it flourishes. Nature never rushes this transition. It moves with patience, keeping balance between energy and calm. Autumn comes as a whisper rather than a fall. Leaves change color as daylight fades, revealing pigments hidden all along. The air cools, crops ripen, and migratory creatures begin their long journeys. There is no tragedy in this fading, only continuity. What seems like ending is simply preparation. The world gathers its strength, storing light in seed and soil for the return of spring. The stillness of autumn evenings, when mist settles low over fields and the sun lingers red on the horizon, reminds us that rest is part of renewal. Winter is the planet's deep breath. The sunlight grows weak, the air stills, and life withdraws into shelter. The land seems lifeless, but beneath the frost, energy waits quietly. Trees conserve their sap, animals sleep or slow their heartbeat, and even the air feels heavier, as if time itself has paused. The tilt of the earth carries our hemisphere away from the sun, but the same movement that brings darkness also guarantees the return of dawn. The geometry never falters. The orbit never stops. In scientific terms, the seasons are the result of simple celestial mechanics. The Earth orbits the Sun in an ellipse, not a perfect circle. The axial tilt ensures that sunlight strikes at different angles throughout the year. Yet this small detail, this 23-degree inclination, has shaped the entire story of life. Evolution itself followed the rhythm of warmth and cold, abundance and scarcity. Migration, hibernation, flowering, and decay all follow the same cosmic choreography. Even the air and oceans join this slow waltz. Winds shift with the seasons, carrying rains to one continent and dryness to another. Ocean currents, warmed and cooled by the sun's varying reach, regulate climates across the globe. Monsoons, once thought to be divine moods, are now understood as large-scale breaths of the planet. The exhalation of heat and the inhalation of cool air, timed precisely to the turning of the year. Humans, too, are bound to this rhythm. In winter, we draw inward, seeking warmth and rest. In spring, we reach outward again. The cycle of energy within us mirrors the larger cycle around us. Even in cities of electric light and constant motion, people feel the change subconsciously, a shift in pace, a difference in mood. Science may explain the reason, but the feeling remains older than understanding. Across time, poets and philosophers have seen in the seasons a reflection of existence itself: birth, growth, decline, and renewal. Modern science has not removed that poetry. It has only deepened it. To know that these changes are the result of the Earth's tilt does not make them less beautiful. It makes them universal. Every sunrise, every blooming flower, every snow-covered field participates in the same cosmic rhythm, set in motion billions of years ago and continuing without pause. At the poles, where the sun can disappear for months or refuse to set at all, the extremes of this tilt are most visible. Yet even there, balance persists. The long nights give way to endless day. The endless day returns to darkness. The earth never forgets its angle. It turns with the same quiet grace through each cycle, indifferent to the passage of centuries. And so, when the wind shifts, when the air changes scent, when sunlight falls at a new angle through the window, it is the earth speaking softly, a whisper of geometry, a murmur of time. The seasons are not commands or miracles. They are the gentle consequence of motion, repeated so perfectly that life has built itself around their rhythm. As the planet continues its orbit, there is no beginning and no end, only movement. Winter yields to spring, spring to summer, summer to autumn, and autumn back to rest. The cycle continues, unbroken, calm, and infinite. The world breathes in warmth, exhales into cold, and begins again, always turning, always whispering the same eternal lullaby of light and time. The first cell before life began, the earth was silent. Oceans shimmered under a young sun, their surfaces stirred only by wind and heat. Volcanoes breathed smoke into the air, and lightning traced brief veins of light through heavy clouds. Beneath that surface calm, the planet was busy. Minerals mixed with water, gases rose and cooled, and molecules drifted through cycles of creation and destruction. Out of this endless chemistry, something began to change. Not suddenly, but gradually, almost imperceptibly. What had once been inanimate matter started to arrange itself into patterns. The story of life began not with breath, but with structure. Every living thing, no matter how complex, can trace its origin back to a single kind of structure: the cell. It is not just a building block, but a boundary, a tiny bubble separating the inside from the outside, order from chaos. The first cells were not yet alive in the way we understand it. They were collections of molecules that managed to persist. They could take in energy, maintain their shape, and eventually make copies of themselves. That small ability to reproduce, to sustain, marked the beginning of all life on Earth. For centuries, people believed that life must have come from something divine, that the spark of animation required purpose or will. The discovery of the cell changed that belief. Under simple glass lenses, scientists saw for the first time that living tissue was made of countless tiny chambers, each self-contained, each performing quiet work. What seemed miraculous was revealed to be ordinary and repeated across all forms of life. The smallest leaf, the simplest creature, the most complex human body, all shared the same architecture. But the origin of that architecture stretched far beyond human history. In the beginning, the Earth's oceans were rich in elements: carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, and sulfur. Under the right conditions, these elements combined into more complex molecules. Simple compounds became amino acids linked into proteins. Some of these molecules folded in ways that allowed them to interact, to bond, and to store energy. The first steps toward life were not leaps of creation, but small, repetitive experiments in chemistry. One of the great mysteries solved by science was how such molecules could copy themselves. In the mid-20th century, researchers found that certain chains of molecules, like RNA, could hold information and catalyze reactions. They were not alive, but they behaved as if they were trying to become so. Within this quiet molecular dance, replication began. Some arrangements lasted longer than others. Some made copies more efficiently. Over immense time, those that survived continued to refine themselves. It was not intention. It was persistence. Eventually, these early molecules enclosed themselves in membranes, thin layers formed from fatty compounds that naturally assembled into bubbles. These bubbles protected their contents from the surrounding environment while allowing energy and nutrients to pass through. Inside, reactions continued, building and breaking, copying and combining. These structures were not yet true cells, but they had found the essential balance: protection without isolation, openness without chaos. In this state, life became more than chemistry. It became continuity. Once enclosed, these tiny systems began to divide. When a bubble grew too large, it split, and both halves continued the same cycle. Some absorbed sunlight, using it to power internal reactions. Others fed on minerals dissolved in water. Over time, these tiny forms diversified, adapting to their surroundings. The oceans, once barren, filled with invisible motion. Fossil evidence shows that the first true cells, prokaryotes, appeared more than 3.5 billion years ago. They had no nucleus, no specialized parts, yet they managed everything needed to survive: energy production, replication, repair. They were small enough to go unnoticed, but their influence was immense. They exhaled oxygen, altered the planet's atmosphere, and paved the way for every complex organism to come. What began as a single cell eventually built forests, oceans, and mines. Science, in uncovering this process, found that life does not require a miracle. It requires time, stability, and the right conditions for molecules to meet. The same principles that shape weather or stone, balance, reaction, persistence, also shaped the living world. The boundary between chemistry and biology is not sharp. It is a gradual slope, a long blending where matter learns to organize itself into cycles of self-renewal. Even today, every living thing carries traces of that origin. The membranes of modern cells echo those first bubbles of fat. The proteins that fold and unfold in our bodies follow the same logic as those ancient chains of molecules. The energy we use still flows through reactions first established in primitive oceans. In each heartbeat, in each breath, the memory of the first cell remains, not as a relic, but as an ongoing act of repetition. When scientists recreate parts of this process in laboratories, combining simple compounds under heat and pressure, they witness a hint of the ancient Earth. Molecules assemble, divide, and form boundaries of their own. They do not think, yet they organize. They do not choose, yet they persist. It is as if the planet itself remembers the recipe. Understanding this quiet origin does not remove the wonder of life. It deepens it. To know that everything, from forests to cities, from whales to people, began as an accidental collaboration between heat, water, and molecules gives a sense of profound connection. The miracle is not that life exists, but that it continues, endlessly copying itself, refining its structures, and adapting to every change. When we speak of the first cell, we are not speaking of a single moment but of a process that continues in every living thing. Each cell today performs the same functions. It guards its boundary, takes in nourishment, divides, and dies. The same balance that began billions of years ago continues within us. The planet is still alive with that ancient motion, invisible and ceaseless. If the weather is the breath of the earth, then life is its heartbeat, slow, steady, and persistent. The first cell was that first beat, a faint pulse that began in the quiet waters of a young world and has never stopped. Everything since then, every movement, every sound, every thought, is part of that same rhythm. The world, even now, echoes with its quiet continuation. The hidden blueprint every living thing carries within it a quiet instruction manual. A set of directions written in a language too small to see, yet precise enough to build a universe of forms. This hidden code is called DNA, and it is the closest thing nature has to memory. It tells a seed how to become a tree, a cell how to repair itself, and a species how to continue. For billions of years, this blueprint has been copied, altered, and passed on, generation after generation, binding all living things to one continuous thread of inheritance. The discovery of DNA's structure was one of science's most delicate revelations. For centuries, people observed heredity, the way traits passed from parent to child, without understanding how it worked. Farmers saw patterns in crops and animals. Naturalists noticed resemblance across generations. They knew there must be a mechanism behind it, but it remained unseen. It wasn't until the middle of the 20th century that two scientists, using X-ray images and mathematical insight, uncovered the double helix, a spiral staircase of molecules, twisting endlessly, holding the secrets of life in every step. The DNA molecule is made of 4 simple building blocks, called bases: adenine, thymine, cytosine, and guanine. Their arrangement forms a code, a quiet alphabet that can describe every shape, every color, every function in a living organism. It is not written in words, but in sequences, each 3 letters corresponding to one instruction. Make this protein, shape that cell, begin this process. The combinations are nearly infinite. And yet, the code is shared. From the smallest microbe to the tallest tree, the same 4 letters form the foundation of all life. Within each cell, DNA rests in long, coiled strands called chromosomes. Before a cell divides, it carefully copies this information, ensuring that both new cells carry the same design. The process is not perfect. Small changes occur, substitutions, deletions, insertions, tiny errors in copying that, over time, create variation. Most changes are harmless, some are beneficial, and a few are harmful. Through this slow and endless reshuffling, evolution proceeds. Life experiments with itself, generation by generation, guided by chance and persistence. Every human carries about 3 billion of these base pairs, arranged in a pattern so detailed that it defines everything from eye color to immune strength. Yet, among all people, more than 99% of this code is identical. The differences that separate us are minute, far smaller than what connects us. This is true across all species. A human shares roughly half of its genetic code with a banana, and nearly all of it with a chimpanzee. The diversity of life arises not from separate origins, but from the reworking of the same ancient instructions. For millions of years, DNA has been quietly recording the history of life. Fossils tell us what creatures looked like, but DNA tells us how they functioned, where they came from, and how they changed. In the slow machinery of the cell, enzymes unzip and copy these strands with care, reading the code like a story written across time. When a creature dies, the code does not vanish entirely. Fragments remain, hidden in descendants, carried forward as echoes. The tree of life, once imagined as a metaphor, is literally encoded in every living thing. The structure of the double helix itself ensures its survival. Each strand carries the same information, mirrored so that if one is damaged, the other can guide repair. It is a system of built-in redundancy, nature's way of ensuring resilience. The bonds that hold it together are weak enough to allow flexibility, yet strong enough to endure. This balance between strength and adaptability is the secret of DNA's longevity. It can change without collapsing, evolve without losing coherence. Inside every cell, DNA's instructions are transcribed into RNA, a single-stranded messenger that carries the code to the ribosomes, tiny factories that build proteins. These proteins are the true workers of life, folding into intricate shapes that form muscles, enzymes, skin, and thought. The process happens millions of times each second in the body, silently and perfectly coordinated. The result is not chaos but harmony, a living system that maintains itself with constant precision. When scientists began decoding genomes, the complete set of DNA for an organism, they discovered something even more humbling. Much of the code does not directly create proteins. Large portions are silent, seemingly inactive, yet crucial for timing, regulation, and balance. They act as punctuation marks in the sentence of life, ensuring that everything happens in the right order. This hidden structure beneath the visible one is a reminder that simplicity often conceals depth. The more we understand the code, the more we realize how much remains quietly mysterious. Even the smallest changes in DNA can shape the course of species and history. A single mutation may alter a feather, shift a pigment, or change the curve of a bone. Over countless generations, these changes accumulate, forming adaptations that define survival. Evolution is not a conscious force. It is the gentle filtering of variation through time. The instructions remain, but the outcomes drift, guided only by which combinations persist. The discovery of DNA also revealed something deeply connecting. All life shares a common origin. The molecules in our cells are not unique to us. They were forged in the same pattern billions of years ago, when the first forms of life learned to copy themselves. Every creature, every plant, every human, every unseen bacterium carries a version of the same original message. We are, quite literally, branches of one unbroken line. When seen this way, DNA is more than a molecule. It is a bridge between matter and meaning. It gives shape to the invisible, turning chemistry into form, and form into continuity. It explains how a tree knows to grow upward, how a heart learns to beat, and how a species remembers itself. Yet it also reminds us that change is constant. No code is fixed forever. Mutations continue. Evolution never stops. The world, at the molecular level, is always rewriting itself. In the stillness of the night, as you breathe, every cell in your body quietly follows its instructions. Thousands of reactions unfold, guided by that hidden text. It has no author, no intention, only the rhythm of repetition. And in that repetition lies all the diversity of life. Every song, every color, every shape. The code does not sleep even when you do. It hums beneath consciousness, preserving, copying, adjusting, ensuring that tomorrow, life will begin its quiet cycle again. The hidden blueprint is not just a record of the past. It is the steady pulse of the present, carried in the smallest corners of existence. Within its spirals lies the story of everything that grows, breathes, and changes. An endless whisper written in molecules, repeating the same calm promise. Life continues. The rhythm of growth, every living thing grows. Yet few notice how quietly it happens. A seed becomes a tree, a child becomes an adult, and a colony of cells becomes a body, all through movements so gradual that time itself seems to slow around them. Growth is not a sudden burst of creation but a rhythm, steady, predictable, and deeply mathematical. It is life's most patient performance, a series of small, repeated gestures that shape forests, bodies, and entire ecosystems. In the beginning, growth is invisible. Within a seed, tissues wait in stillness, carrying all the information needed to build roots, leaves, and fruit. The seed remains dormant until conditions are right: warmth, moisture, and light. Then its shell softens and life begins to stir. A root emerges first, anchoring into the soil. From that single point, it divides, branches, and spreads, seeking water and nutrients. Above, a shoot rises toward the sun, unfolding tiny leaves that will soon turn sunlight into energy. This simple choreography has been repeated billions of times, unchanged in its purpose and calm precision. Plants do not hurry. Their cells divide in measured succession, expanding cell walls, elongating stems, and unfurling leaves with slow consistency. Inside each cell, microscopic structures coordinate this expansion. DNA provides the instructions, enzymes guide the reactions, and the rhythm continues, day after day. Even trees that will one day stand taller than buildings begin in silence, adding ring after ring of growth so subtle that decades pass before the difference is clear. In animals, the rhythm follows the same quiet law. Growth begins as a single fertilized cell dividing into two, then many more. Each division carries the same genetic information, yet cells begin to specialize. Some become muscle, others bone, others brain or skin. This differentiation follows signals that guide development in precise order. The process resembles a symphony. Each section enters at the right moment, adding its part to a greater harmony. The result is structure, form, and movement. What makes growth remarkable is not its speed, but its balance. Every living thing grows only to the extent that its environment allows. A tree's height is limited by its ability to draw water upward, an animal's size by its metabolism. Even in abundance, growth stops when equilibrium is reached. This restraint keeps systems stable. It prevents one process from overwhelming another. Nature's rhythm includes both expansion and pause. In the natural world, this rhythm is guided by cycles, light and dark, warmth and cold, abundance and scarcity. A plant bends toward the sun during the day and rests at night. Cells adjust their activity according to circadian clocks, patterns written deep within their chemistry. These internal timers are not conscious, yet they keep perfect time, synchronizing life to the rotation of the planet. When spring returns, buds open not because they choose to, but because the temperature, light, and hormones align in quiet agreement. Human growth, though more visible, follows the same steady rules. In infancy, the body grows rapidly, fueled by constant division of cells. In adolescence, growth accelerates again, guided by hormones and genetics. Then it slows, eventually halting when the balance of creation and decay stabilizes. Even after growth stops, the body continues to renew itself. Skin cells replaced, bones rebuilt, tissues repaired. Every few years, nearly every cell in a human body is new. The person remains the same, yet physically, they are always becoming. Science has revealed that growth is not a uniform process. It follows curves and proportions found throughout nature, spirals in shells, branching in trees, patterns in veins and leaves. These forms arise from mathematical relationships like the Fibonacci sequence, where each new part builds upon the last in harmony. Growth, even at its smallest scale, follows geometry. It is the visible expression of order emerging from repetition. In ecosystems, the rhythm of growth extends beyond individuals. Forests expand through succession. Grasses give way to shrubs, shrubs to trees, until a mature canopy forms. When fire or storm clears the land, the cycle begins again. Coral reefs build themselves layer by layer, tiny organisms forming skeletons that accumulate into vast underwater structures. Each addition seems insignificant, but together they create worlds. Nature never rushes this process. It trusts time to complete the pattern. Growth also requires decay. Cells that no longer serve a purpose die to make way for new ones. Leaves fall so trees can rest. Animals shed skin, feathers, or shells as part of renewal. The rhythm of life depends on this balance between creation and loss. Without it, growth would become chaos, endless expansion without rest. In this way, death is not an interruption but an essential pause, part of the same steady beat. Even at the scale of the planet, growth persists. Continents drift, mountains rise, coral builds reefs, and forests reclaim open ground. The earth itself grows and renews, not through sudden transformation, but through constant, gentle motion. The processes that shape it are slow enough to escape perception yet powerful enough to remake the surface again and again. To study growth scientifically is to recognize its patience. In laboratories, researchers watch cells divide under microscopes, counting each stage in silence. In fields, botanists measure the widening of stems or the unfurling of leaves. In time-lapse recordings, the invisible becomes visible. A flower blooming in seconds, a vine curling toward the sun. The patterns repeat across all forms of life, always following the same underlying rhythm. Expansion guided by balance, progress tempered by rest. When you observe a tree, a person, or even the smallest living thing, you are witnessing this ancient rhythm still unfolding. Growth is not a miracle reserved for beginnings. It is a continuous act of maintenance, an unending effort to preserve balance between what is and what will be. Each breath you take fuels this quiet process, nourishing cells that build, repair, and renew. You are growing even as you rest, even as you sleep. The rhythm of growth is not about reaching a destination. It is about sustaining motion, preserving life's gentle continuity. From seed to forest, from cell to consciousness, the pattern remains. Life expands, pauses, contracts, and expands again. The music never ends. It only changes tempo. And in that slow, persistent beat lies the calmest truth of all, that to grow is simply to remain in harmony with time. The beating heart at the center of every living creature, there is motion. A rhythm so steady, so constant, that it becomes invisible to awareness. The heart is not a symbol first. It is a pump. It is a small, tireless muscle that began to beat before the body it sustains was even complete. It began early in the womb, when the rest of the form was still being assembled. And from that first contraction, it has never stopped. It will continue until the end, marking every moment of life with its quiet and dependable pulse. The heart's purpose is simple: to keep movement within the body. It sends blood, rich with oxygen and nutrients, through a branching network of arteries and veins. That blood touches every organ, every cell, carrying energy and carrying away waste. It is not dramatic. It is repetitive. The same path again and again, billions of times. Yet in that repetition, life is maintained. The stillness of the body is only an illusion. Beneath it, motion never ceases. In the earliest stages of development, the heart is little more than a tube. It twists and folds, forming chambers that divide and coordinate. With time, valves appear, simple flaps of tissue that open and close in response to pressure. Each beat is a wave, beginning at a point of electrical signal and spreading outward through muscle. These signals, small sparks generated by specialized cells, trigger contraction. The pattern is precise, the timing exact. Every beat follows the one before it in a rhythm older than thought. For centuries, people knew the heart as the seat of emotion, the home of courage and love. They felt its quickening under fear or affection, its stillness in rest, and mistook its rhythm for intention. In truth, the heart responds not to emotion itself, but to the body's needs, faster when energy is required, slower when calm returns. It listens constantly to the chemistry of the blood, adjusting with quiet efficiency. The poetry remains, but the mechanism is mechanical, predictable, and gentle. Each species carries its own rhythm. A hummingbird's heart beats more than 1,000 times each minute, rapid and light. An elephant's beats slowly, once every few seconds, deep and deliberate. Humans rest somewhere between, steady, adaptable, able to quicken or slow as needed. The rate changes with age, with temperature, with the time of day, but the pattern remains unwavering. Contraction, release, contraction again. The discovery of how the heart truly works came gradually. Ancient physicians believed that blood was created and consumed in a single loop, constantly renewed by the liver. It was not until the 17th century that the concept of circulation was revealed. William Harvey, an English physician, described the closed system of blood flow, how the heart sent it forth and received it again, endlessly circulating. What had once been mystery became a cycle, a mechanical certainty hidden beneath the skin. Each heartbeat begins with an impulse from the sinoatrial node, a cluster of specialized cells in the right atrium. This natural pacemaker produces electrical signals that travel through the heart's tissue, causing it to contract in perfect sequence. The upper chambers push blood downward. The lower chambers send it outward. Valves open and close in response, ensuring that the flow moves forward and never back. The result is the familiar pulse, felt at the wrist, the neck, or beneath the ribs. A tiny wave that connects every part of the body in rhythm. Blood itself is not a simple liquid. It is a moving community of cells, red cells carrying oxygen, white cells guarding against infection, platelets sealing wounds, plasma carrying nutrients and waste. In each heartbeat, these elements pass through arteries that divide into smaller vessels, then into capillaries thinner than a strand of hair. Here, exchange happens. Oxygen leaves. Carbon dioxide enters. Nutrients move in. Toxins move out. Then, the flow returns, completing its circuit. The journey lasts less than a minute, yet it repeats for a lifetime. The sound of a heartbeat, that familiar lube dub, is the closing of valves. Each sound marks a transition, from contraction to rest, from one chamber's work to the next. It is not dramatic, but it is final in its precision. Modern instruments can measure every fraction of this rhythm, yet no device captures its simple constancy. It is both mechanical and organic, a machine made of living tissue that repairs itself as it works. When the heart falters, the entire system feels it. A missed beat, a slowed pulse, a faint irregularity. Each reveals how dependent the body is on balance. Yet the heart is resilient. It adapts to stress, to exercise, to illness. Can grow stronger through effort or recover after damage. In some animals, like certain reptiles and fish, parts of the heart can even regenerate. Nature has built it not for perfection, but for endurance. Beyond biology, the rhythm of the heart has become the measure of existence. It synchronizes with breath, with motion, with sleep. Even at rest, it changes slightly with every inhale and exhale, adjusting to the smallest variations in need. When two people sit together quietly, their heart rates can begin to align, drawn by the same subtle cues of presence. The body listens not only to itself, but to others. The heart, though unconscious, participates in connection. Science can describe every mechanism of the heartbeat, the ions that trigger muscle contraction, the currents that travel through tissue, the pressure that propels blood. Yet none of this reduces its wonder. If anything, it amplifies it. The fact that such complexity can run without awareness, without command, is its own quiet miracle. The heart does not require thought to continue. It keeps its own time. Through every stage of life, its rhythm changes but never ceases. Before birth, it beats rapidly, establishing circulation in a forming body. In youth, it strengthens to meet the demands of motion and growth. In age, it slows, its muscle thickened by years of repetition. And when it stops, the silence that follows is not sudden. It is simply the end of movement, the return of matter to stillness. Yet even in that stillness, the memory of its rhythm remains everywhere. In rivers that flow, in tides that rise and fall, in winds that pulse across plains. The same laws that drive the heartbeat shape the movements of the earth and sky. Pressure, release, circulation, they are the language of all motion. The human heart is a small echo of a larger pattern, one that extends beyond bodies and into the quiet machinery of the world. When you lie still and feel the soft thud beneath your ribs, you are listening to that pattern. It began long before you were aware of it and will continue without your attention. Each beat is both a beginning and a continuation, both effort and rest. In its sound lies the most reliable truth of life, that even in quiet, the world moves. The heart does not ask permission. It simply keeps time. The silent mind within every human being there is a landscape more intricate than any mountain range, more mysterious than any ocean. It does not exist in space, yet it fills the body with presence. This landscape is the mind, a quiet current of awareness carried by the brain. For centuries, philosophers, mystics, and scientists have tried to understand it. Some called it the soul, others thought of it as the seat of reason, memory, or emotion. Only in the last few generations has science begun to uncover its mechanisms. Yet even now, much of the mind remains hidden, active, alive, and silent. The brain itself is a dense web of matter. About 3 pounds of tissue, containing roughly 86 billion neurons, each connecting to thousands of others. These neurons communicate through electrical impulses and chemical signals, forming networks of thought and sensation. Every action, from lifting a hand to forming a memory, is the product of these tiny exchanges. Each pulse is brief, a fraction of a second, yet together they create the continuity of consciousness. At its simplest, the brain is an organ of coordination. It gathers information from the senses, interprets it, and directs responses. Light becomes sight, vibration becomes sound, pressure becomes touch. But beyond this processing lies something subtler: awareness. The ability not only to sense the world, but to know that one is sensing it. This self-awareness arises from patterns so complex that no single neuron holds the answer. It emerges from the system as a whole, like music emerging from the vibration of strings. For most of its work, the mind does not need attention. The majority of its activity happens without conscious thought. The heart beats, lungs expand, eyes adjust to light, and muscles maintain posture, all directed by regions of the brain that operate automatically. Even emotion arises before it is named. A sound startles, a scent soothes, a face comforts. These reactions happen before awareness catches up. The conscious mind observes what the deeper mind has already decided. When the mind is still, when external noise fades, a quieter layer of activity becomes noticeable. Thoughts drift, memories surface, and inner dialogue slows. The brain never stops working, but its rhythm softens. Neural waves shift into slower frequencies, the same ones that appear in meditation and sleep. Science has mapped these changes, labeling them alpha, theta, delta, each corresponding to a state of calm or rest. What once seemed mystical is now measurable, though its experience remains deeply personal. The mind is not a single thing, but a collection of systems working in harmony. The limbic system shapes emotion, the cortex organizes logic, the hippocampus stores memory, and the thalamus filters sensation. Together, they create the illusion of unity, a single I that experiences the world. Yet that unity is an ongoing construction, built moment by moment. What you call yourself is the sum of millions of signals agreeing briefly to cooperate. Dreams reveal this cooperation most clearly. In sleep, when the conscious mind relaxes, the deeper layers continue their work. They replay fragments of experience, rearranging them into new forms. The mind, unanchored from the senses, creates its own reality. Scientists believe dreaming helps process memory and emotion, organizing the day's impressions into meaning. To the sleeper, it feels like story. To the brain, it is maintenance. Even in rest, the mind repairs itself. Thought itself is another kind of rhythm. It arises, holds, and fades. The same pattern repeats endlessly, whether through reasoning, imagination, or reflection. Neuroscientists describe this as firing and inhibition, neurons activating and quieting in coordinated waves. Meditation traditions describe it differently: the stilling of thought, the space between one moment and the next. Both views point to the same truth, that silence is not the absence of the mind, but one of its deepest states. The brain's energy never ceases. Even when the body sleeps, it consumes about 1/5 of all the oxygen you breathe. Each second, billions of chemical reactions occur, maintaining a fragile balance of charge and flow. This quiet storm of electricity and chemistry creates every feeling, memory, and word. To think is to release a pattern of energy. To rest is to let it settle again. The mind is like the weather of the body, sometimes turbulent, often calm, always moving. Science has found that consciousness itself depends on communication between regions of the brain. If signals slow or disconnect, awareness fades. When the connections strengthen, clarity returns. This interdependence gives rise to the sense of continuity we call identity. Yet the self, as stable as it feels, is more fluid than we imagine. Memories change slightly each time they are recalled. Emotions rewrite perception. Every moment of awareness is new, shaped by what came just before. The mind, like a river, never holds the same water twice. For centuries, people searched for a single place where the soul might reside, a hidden center, a spark of divine presence. Science has found no such spot, only networks, rhythms, and exchanges. Yet the absence of a single origin does not make the experience less meaningful. It makes it more extraordinary. Consciousness is not contained. It is distributed, shared among billions of cooperating cells. It is not a flame, but a constellation of lights flickering together. In the quiet of night, when the senses withdraw, this network settles into deeper harmony. The mind becomes less concerned with external input and more occupied with balance, regulating the body, releasing tension, restoring energy. The state between waking and sleep, known as hypnagogia, is one of gentle transition. Thoughts drift into images. Logic gives way to pattern. Here, the boundaries of the self soften. Science observes this as neural synchronization. Experience describes it as peace. To understand the silent mind is to accept that not all things need to be solved. Some can only be witnessed. The brain, for all its measurable activity, produces something beyond measurement: awareness itself. It is both the observer and the observed, the question and the answer. To sit quietly, feeling the gentle hum of thought beneath stillness, is to hear the echo of a process billions of years old, the same continuity that began with the first cell and now looks back upon itself through the lens of consciousness. The mind is not loud. It whispers through sensation, memory, and intuition. It carries the rhythm of the heart, the cycles of the earth, the balance of light and dark. In every moment of calm reflection, in every breath taken without urgency, you share in that silence. Not the absence of sound, but the presence of harmony. And in that quiet, the mind finds what it has always sought. Not understanding, but rest. The weight of the invisible, everything we can touch, see, or feel is made of matter. Yet the true nature of matter remains almost invisible. What feels solid beneath the hand is mostly empty space. What looks still is made of endless motion. For much of human history, people could not imagine that the stone in their hand, the air they breathed, and the stars above were built from the same kind of substance. They believed that matter and spirit, earth and sky, were entirely different things. But as understanding deepened, science revealed something simpler and quieter. All things, no matter how vast or small, are made of the same repeating forms, tiny, weightless patterns of existence. The story of matter begins long before there were planets, or even light. In the first seconds after the birth of the universe, energy condensed into the simplest particles. Protons, neutrons, and electrons appeared in immense heat, scattered through space. They were the first building blocks of everything. Over time, gravity drew them together, forming atoms, small systems where electrons circled dense centers of energy. The universe cooled, and in that cooling, order emerged. What had once been chaos became structure. Atoms are almost impossible to grasp intuitively. If one were enlarged to the size of a cathedral, its nucleus, the dense heart containing protons and neutrons, would be smaller than a grain of sand. The rest is space, held together by invisible forces. Yet within that emptiness lies the strength of the world. The bonds that connect particles are powerful beyond measure. They are the reason that mountains stand, oceans rest within their basins, and your own body keeps its form. The solidity of the world is an illusion created by the resistance of invisible fields. Every atom behaves like a small solar system, though far more mysterious. Electrons do not orbit in neat circles. They exist in clouds of probability, appearing and vanishing too quickly to trace. Quantum mechanics describes this behavior not in images, but in equations, quiet mathematical poetry that explains how the unseen shapes the visible. The more scientists study these patterns, the less mechanical the universe seems, and the more it resembles a web of relationships, where each particle affects every other across unimaginable distance. All matter on Earth, the iron in rocks, the calcium in bones, the carbon in trees, was once part of stars. Within those ancient furnaces, atoms collided and fused into heavier elements, releasing light in the process. When the stars died, they scattered their contents across space, seeding new worlds. Every solid object is the residue of that explosion. The iron in your blood was forged in a collapsing star. The carbon in your body was born from stellar fire. When you breathe, you inhale atoms that have traveled through oceans, clouds, and countless living things. Nothing is new. Everything has only changed form. For centuries, people divided matter into elements: earth, air, fire, and water, believing that all substances were mixtures of these essentials. The idea persisted because it felt intuitive: solid, fluid, invisible, and bright. When chemistry began to measure and separate, the picture became more detailed but no less elegant. There were not 4 elements, but over 100, each with its own properties and patterns. The periodic table, when first assembled, was not a list but a rhythm, a repeating structure showing that nature itself is ordered. Elements combine in ratios that never vary. What we call variety is merely the infinite reshuffling of the same ingredients. Despite its apparent simplicity, matter holds layers of mystery. Subatomic particles, protons, neutrons, electrons, are themselves composed of smaller entities called quarks, bound by forces so strong that they can never exist alone. These forces are invisible but constant, forming the glue of the universe. Even the empty space between particles is filled with potential energy, a background hum of existence that never entirely stops. Space, it turns out, is not nothing. It is a sea of unseen motion. Without the invisible, there would be no visible. The weight you feel when lifting an object is not just mass resisting motion, but a conversation between countless particles exchanging forces, agreeing silently to hold their shape. Science has revealed that even the densest material is in motion. In a block of iron, electrons swarm around their nuclei, and the atoms themselves vibrate within a lattice. The harder the substance, the tighter the vibration. Temperature is the measure of this motion. Heat is not a fluid or a spark, but the average trembling of matter. When something cools, it slows. When it warms, it dances faster. Every piece of the world, from mountains to ice, is moving constantly, though we cannot see it. What we call solid and liquid are simply states of matter defined by how tightly its particles cling to one another. In solids, they vibrate in place. In liquids, they slide and rearrange. In gases, they drift freely. Beyond these states are others, plasma, where atoms lose their electrons and glow with energy, and Bose-Einstein condensates, where matter becomes so cold that individual particles merge into one shared identity. The same matter, depending on conditions, can appear as stone, water, vapor, or light. To understand this is to realize that the boundary between the physical and the abstract is not as firm as it seems. The invisible gives rise to the tangible. Emptiness creates weight. The air that fills your lungs, though unseen, carries more substance than all the mountains combined, stretched thin but everywhere. Even the colors we see are not properties of objects, but of light reflected and absorbed by atomic structure. The world is not painted, but illuminated by the behavior of the unseen. When you sit still and touch the surface of a table, you are not meeting solidity, but resistance, electromagnetic forces repelling one another at atomic distances. Your hand and the table never truly touch. They hover a fraction of a nanometer apart, held apart by invisible laws that keep the world intact. The sensation of touch is simply the translation of that repulsion into nerve signals. The physical and the perceptual merge in a quiet illusion that allows us to navigate reality. Matter, for all its weight and density, is patient. It does not rush to change. Rocks weather, metals corrode, and stars burn out, but the particles remain. They are passed from one form to another, rearranged but never destroyed. This constancy gives the universe its calm. Everything that exists has existed in some form before, and will continue in some form after. The world is not made of separate things, but of continuous motion, endlessly shifting shape within a single unbroken field. When science uncovered the truth of matter, it did not replace mystery with certainty. It revealed that mystery is built into the smallest parts of existence. To know that everything solid is mostly space, that everything still is in motion, is to glimpse a world both stable and fleeting. The invisible gives structure to the visible. The emptiness gives substance to the full. The weight we feel when we stand upon the earth is not the heaviness of stone, but the quiet insistence of the unseen holding us close. And so, the next time you feel the ground beneath your feet, remember that it, too, is made of light slowed and shaped by gravity and time. The stone, the air, the body, all are composed of the same quiet matter, moving endlessly, obeying laws older than the stars. The universe is not heavy. It only appears that way. Beneath it all, existence is a whisper of particles, invisible, persistent, and eternal. The fabric of motion, nothing in the universe is truly still. Even in the quietest corners of existence, where air stands motionless and stars seem frozen in the night, there is movement, subtle, constant, and unending. Every atom vibrates, every planet turns, and even light itself travels with infinite patience through the vastness of space. What seems fixed is only moving too slowly for the eye to see, or too smoothly to disturb the senses. The world we live in is woven entirely from motion. It is the fabric of reality, the rhythm that connects all things. For much of history, people believed the earth was the unmoving center of the universe. The sun, the moon, and the stars appeared to circle it each day. That illusion persisted for thousands of years, supported by what could be seen. Yet, as observation deepened, a new truth emerged, not emotional or dramatic, but calm and inevitable. The earth itself was turning, completing one rotation every 24 hours, spinning quietly beneath our feet. The sky was not moving around us, we were moving through the sky. When this idea first took hold, it seemed impossible to many. If the earth was spinning, why did people not feel the wind rushing past, or see objects thrown from its surface? The answer was hidden in simplicity. Motion, when shared, is imperceptible. The air, the oceans, the mountains all move together with the planet. Motion is relative. To feel movement, there must be difference. Without it, everything seems still. The understanding of motion deepened further when scientists observed the paths of falling objects and the orbits of planets. They discovered that motion follows rules, gentle mathematical relationships that govern how things move and change. These laws, described by Isaac Newton, revealed a universe not of chaos, but of balance. An object in motion stays in motion unless acted upon. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Forces are not commands, but negotiations between bodies. What appears dynamic is, in truth, peaceful coordination. Gravity, that silent force drawing everything together, is the quiet conductor of this harmony. It does not pull or push in the way we imagine. It curves space itself, guiding matter along invisible paths. The moon orbits Earth not because it is tethered, but because it is falling continuously, falling around the Earth rather than toward it. Planets do the same around the sun, stars around galaxies, and galaxies around clusters. Everything moves in curved lines through the geometry of gravity. Motion defines the passage of time. Without movement, time would have no measure, for change is its only marker. The rotation of the Earth creates day and night. Its orbit defines the year. The vibration of atoms forms the basis of clocks, each oscillation a heartbeat of precision. Even within the smallest scales of existence, motion and time are inseparable. When matter slows, so does the rhythm of experience. When it stops, if such stillness could exist, time itself would lose meaning. At every level, motion reveals pattern. The wind bends grass, ocean currents trace invisible highways through the sea, and rivers carve slow pathways through stone. The same principles govern both the smallest and largest movements. In fluids, molecules slide past one another in graceful turbulence. In space, stars drift according to equations of balance. The universe does not hurry. It moves with purpose, following the most efficient paths. The air that surrounds us moves in vast loops, guided by temperature and pressure. Warm air rises, cool air sinks, and together they create winds that cross continents. These movements, though complex, are predictable when seen from above. They follow steady circulation patterns that repeat with the seasons, forming an atmospheric rhythm that sustains life. Birds migrate on these winds, seeds travel across oceans, and even distant deserts are nourished by dust carried from faraway lands. The motion of air, invisible and endless, connects every corner of the planet. In water, motion follows another order. Waves rise and fall, driven by wind and gravity, transferring energy across the surface of the sea. Deep beneath, ocean currents move more slowly, guided by differences in temperature and salinity. These currents carry heat from the equator toward the poles, moderating climate and shaping weather. The planet's waters are in constant circulation, turning the globe into one vast, breathing organism. Even within the body, motion defines life. The heart beats, blood flows, lungs expand and contract, and electrical signals travel through nerves. Each movement, though microscopic, contributes to the larger motion of the organism. Stillness in living things is only apparent. Beneath calm faces and steady hands, motion never ceases. In the smallest realms of physics, motion becomes even more mysterious. Particles do not move in straight lines but exist as probabilities, appearing in one place and then another, as if smeared across possibility itself. Quantum mechanics describes this with precision but little intuition. At that level, the difference between motion and stillness dissolves. Existence itself is defined by fluctuation. Even a vacuum, what we once called empty space, is alive with motion, filled with virtual particles appearing and disappearing too quickly to be observed. Light, the purest form of motion, travels constantly, carrying energy across distance without needing a medium. It moves at a fixed speed, about 300,000 kilometers per second, and never slows. Yet to light, time does not pass. From its own perspective, it leaves and arrives simultaneously. This paradox reveals how deeply time and motion intertwine, each shaping the other in ways beyond ordinary perception. The concept of inertia, the tendency of objects to maintain their state, shows that motion itself is not effort but balance. A body in motion does not require force to keep moving, only to change direction. In the same way, planets glide endlessly through space, not because something pushes them, but because nothing resists them. Motion is not the exception but the default condition of the universe. When a planet moves through space, it also moves through time, curving both as it goes. The faster something moves, the slower time passes for it. The universe, in this view, is not a stage upon which things move. It is the movement itself, the woven fabric of existence in motion. In daily life, motion surrounds us in ways we barely register. The earth rotating underfoot, the tides rising and falling, the pulse of the blood, the flicker of sunlight through leaves. Each movement is small, but together they form the background hum of being. The quiet turning of the world continues as we sleep, carrying us through night into morning, through years into ages. The fabric of motion is what holds the universe together. It is neither violent nor hurried, but continuous and precise. Everything changes, yet the laws remain constant. Motion is not chaos. It is the pattern of stability written across time. The same rhythm that moves galaxies also moves the smallest particles. The same balance that turns planets also sways blades of grass. To sit still and breathe is to participate in this motion. The air entering and leaving the lungs, the blood moving beneath the skin, the earth spinning beneath it all. Stillness is only the perception of motion too large or too small to feel. The world, in truth, never stops moving. The fabric of motion is the quiet pulse of the universe, the endless and patient flow that carries everything forward, together, without rest. The slow fire was one of humanity's earliest mysteries. It appeared suddenly, consumed everything it touched, and vanished just as quickly, leaving warmth and ash behind. To early humans it seemed alive, a flickering creature that breathed and fed, that danced and died. They used it for heat, for light, for protection. But they could not yet understand what it truly was. Centuries later, science would reveal that fire is not a thing, but a process, a slow, visible form of transformation, governed by the same quiet laws that shape all energy. Every act of burning is a conversation between matter and oxygen. When wood or oil or any fuel meets air and heat, its molecules rearrange. Bonds that once held atoms together break apart, releasing energy stored over years or centuries. That energy appears as light and warmth, a momentary return of potential to motion. What looks like destruction is, in truth, exchange. Matter does not vanish in flame. It changes state, from solid to gas, from order to movement. Fire's presence on Earth depends entirely on life. The oxygen that sustains it did not exist in the planet's early atmosphere. It was produced by ancient microorganisms, tiny algae and bacteria that learned to release oxygen through photosynthesis. For billions of years, they filled the sky with the gas that allows all combustion, including breathing. In this way, fire is the echo of photosynthesis in reverse. Plants take in light and store energy in chemical form. Fire releases that energy again as light and heat. The two are opposite halves of one slow cycle. The discovery that burning and breathing were related came only a few centuries ago. In the late 18th century, scientists like Antoine Lavoisier measured the weight of materials before and after combustion. They found that matter was not lost in flame. It simply combined with air. The same oxygen that feeds a flame also sustains lungs. The slow fire of respiration burns invisibly inside every living creature, maintaining warmth and motion without visible flame. Each cell carries its own small fire, fueled by the food we eat and the air we breathe. In the body, this slow fire unfolds molecule by molecule. Sugars and fats, formed from sunlight and soil, react with oxygen in the cells. The process releases energy in careful steps, captured by structures called mitochondria. These microscopic furnaces break down molecules and store their power in chemical bonds, which the body then uses for movement, thought, and repair. It is the same principle that drives any fire, only gentler and slower, measured not in seconds but in breaths. Because of this, every living being glows faintly. Though the light is invisible to the eye, sensitive instruments can detect it, a soft radiance from chemical reactions within cells. This bioluminescence is the signature of life's inner fire, steady and quiet. The body's warmth, the rise of breath, the heartbeat, all are manifestations of energy being transformed from stored potential into motion and heat. The fire never rages. It hums. Fire also defines the age of civilization. When humans learned to control it, they gained mastery over their environment. They cooked food, hardened clay, smelted metal, and eventually built engines that turned flame into movement. The Industrial Revolution was nothing more than fire tamed and multiplied. Coal and oil burned in chambers, expanding air, turning pistons, powering machines. Yet beneath the noise and smoke, the process remained the same. Oxygen meeting fuel, energy released in balance. Even stars, the most distant fires of all, follow the same principle. Their glow is the result of fusion rather than combustion, but the logic is unchanged, mass becoming energy. In the sun's heart, hydrogen atoms merge into helium, releasing light that crosses space and touches Earth after 8 minutes of travel. Every flicker of a candle carries the memory of that same process, scaled down from the cosmic to the human. The flame's color, its warmth, its lifespan, all reflect the chemistry of light and motion. In the quiet of understanding, fire ceases to be a symbol of violence and becomes a lesson in exchange. It teaches that energy is neither created nor destroyed. It only moves between forms. What burns today will cool tomorrow, and what cools may one day burn again. The carbon released into air by a forest fire will be absorbed by plants, transformed into leaves and bark, and someday return to flame. The cycle is endless, balanced, and patient. Even without flame, the slow fire continues everywhere. In the Earth's core, molten rock circulates in heat produced by radioactive decay. Deep within the crust, pressure and temperature transform minerals and drive the motion of continents. The planet itself burns invisibly, radiating its stored energy into space. Stars, planets, and living things all share this same condition. They are temporary forms of heat, slowly dispersing into equilibrium. Science calls this process entropy, the gradual spreading of energy until balance is reached. Every fire, every breath, every star contributes to it. It is not loss, but distribution. The universe is slowly cooling, but in that cooling, structure arises. Galaxies, worlds, life. Fire, fast or slow, is simply one expression of that greater movement. The next time you watch a flame, notice its quiet order. The base glows blue, where oxygen is abundant. The center burns yellow, where carbon particles radiate light. The top fades into invisibility, the gases cooling as they rise. Each color marks a stage of transition. Within seconds, matter moves from solid to gas, from structure to freedom. And yet, nothing is wasted. The atoms that once made wood or oil continue elsewhere, in air, in water, in living things. Fire is the visible breath of renewal. In every life, the slow fire continues until it rests. The energy that warms your body, powers your thoughts, and moves your hands will one day return to the world. It will not vanish. It will disperse, joining the atmosphere, the soil, the air that others breathe. The cycle remains perfect, untouched by time or awareness. What we call life is simply the organized burning of energy, guided by balance. Fire began as a mystery and remains one, not because it is unexplained, but because it connects everything. From the stars that formed atoms to the breath that sustains you, it is the same motion, the same exchange, the same quiet release. The slow fire burns in every cell, every star, every moment. The steady warmth of the universe remembering itself. The quiet alchemy for most of human history. The word alchemy carried the weight of mystery. It was a dream of transformation, of turning lead into gold, of discovering an elixir that could grant immortality, of finding the secret essence behind all matter. In dark chambers filled with smoke and candlelight, ancient scholars mixed powders, burned metals, and recorded their failures in cryptic symbols. They sought perfection in substance and, perhaps unknowingly, in themselves. Yet what they pursued through ritual and secrecy, science would later uncover through patience and clarity. The dream was not wrong. Only the method was. The world, it turns out, truly does change one form into another. Not through magic, but through balance and time. Alchemy began as an art of observation. Early metalworkers saw how ores transformed in fire, how dull rock revealed shining veins of metal, how heat and air changed color, texture, and strength. They did not yet know about atoms or reactions, but they understood transformation. The boundaries between philosophy and experiment were still soft. To them, the world was alive, filled with hidden correspondences between sky and stone, spirit and matter. Gold symbolized purity, mercury fluidity, lead heaviness, and each element represented not only a substance but a state of being. The alchemists sought to unite these states into harmony. What they could not yet see was that every transformation they performed, every melting, every burning, every mixture was a chemical reaction. The atoms in their materials were not destroyed or created. They were rearranged. The transmutation they longed for was happening all along, just not in the way they imagined. The lead in their crucibles could not become gold through heat and prayer, but deep inside stars, under unimaginable pressure, the same transformation was real. Nature herself was the original alchemist, fusing elements in her own invisible furnaces. When science replaced alchemy, it did not erase its wonder. It simply removed its disguise. The experiments of alchemists evolved into chemistry, a discipline that no longer sought immortality but understanding. Chemists learned to identify elements, to measure them, and to observe how they combined and separated. They found that matter obeyed consistent laws. Substances reacted according to proportion, energy was conserved, and transformations could be predicted. The philosopher's stone, that mythical key to endless change, was not an object but knowledge itself. At the heart of chemistry lies the same calm truth that eluded the ancients. Everything in nature is composed of the same small alphabet of elements, and every change is a matter of rearrangement. Hydrogen and oxygen, when joined, form water. Carbon and oxygen combine to release energy and create gas. Iron meets oxygen and becomes rust, a quiet exchange between metal and air. There is no destruction here, only motion, the gentle trade of particles seeking equilibrium. Even in the most familiar processes, this quiet alchemy continues. When you breathe, oxygen enters the lungs, binds with hemoglobin, and travels through the blood to each cell. There, it meets carbon in the slow fire of metabolism, forming carbon dioxide, which returns to the air. Each breath completes a circle that connects body and atmosphere, life and environment. The same atoms you exhale may one day be part of another creature, another forest, another cloud. The air itself is the medium of endless exchange. Water, too, moves through transformations that echo the alchemist's dream. It evaporates into vapor, condenses into clouds, falls as rain, and freezes into ice. Each phase change is governed by temperature and pressure, not by magic. Yet, in their simplicity, these transitions carry quiet majesty. They remind us that change does not require violence. Only the right conditions, the right amount of energy, the right moment of balance. In metals, chemistry finds its own calm artistry. Copper exposed to air turns green as it forms a patina. Silver darkens, iron rusts, gold resists change almost entirely. These differences arise from how tightly each metal holds its electrons, how willing it is to bond with others. The color of a surface, the weight of a material, even its scent, all are results of microscopic relationships between atoms. The alchemists, who spoke of metals as living, were not entirely mistaken. Each one carries its own temperament, its own quiet reaction to the world. Modern chemistry has extended the reach of transformation beyond what the ancients could imagine. It can split water into its gases, synthesize medicines from simple elements, and turn crude oil into fabric, food preservatives, and glass. It can build molecules that never existed before, new materials, new colors, new energies. Yet even these advances follow the same timeless logic. The rearrangement of parts within a system that never loses or gains matter, only redistributes it. The deepest alchemy of all, however, happens not in laboratories or furnaces, but within stars. In the hearts of suns, hydrogen atoms fuse into helium, releasing energy in a process that lights the universe. In older stars, heavier elements form: carbon, oxygen, silicon, iron, until the star can no longer sustain its weight. Then it collapses, explodes, and scatters its enriched material across space. Every atom in every body, every crystal, every mountain, was once part of such an explosion. The dream of the alchemists was fulfilled not by human hands, but by the cosmos itself. On Earth, this stardust gathers into new combinations, in oceans, in soil, in air. Plants draw carbon from the atmosphere and build life. Animals consume plants, breaking them down again into new patterns. Rocks erode, minerals dissolve, clouds form and vanish. Each process, each reaction, is part of a chain of transformation so vast that it never truly ends. Nothing is static. Nothing is lost. The world is in perpetual conversation with itself, reshaping endlessly but gently. To understand this is to find peace in impermanence. The alchemists sought permanence, the unchanging metal, the eternal body. Yet nature teaches the opposite. Endurance comes from change. The river that keeps flowing never stagnates. The star that burns releases its energy so that new stars may form. Transformation is not corruption but continuation. In the laboratory or in the quiet processes of the earth, chemistry speaks softly. It has no drama, no sudden revelation. It simply describes what is happening all around us all the time, one substance becoming another, one form dissolving into the next. The philosopher's stone, the ultimate goal of ancient seekers, was never a hidden mineral. It was this realization that change is the only constant, and that through change all things remain connected. Every breath, every flicker of a flame, every rusting nail and blooming flower is a reminder of the same truth. The world is not made of separate materials, but of relationships in motion. The lead and the gold, the living and the dead, the air and the stone, all are stages in a single infinite transformation. The universe itself is the grand experiment, endlessly balancing, endlessly becoming. And so the alchemist's dream, though once cloaked in mysticism, endures in every act of understanding. The quiet alchemy continues, not in secrecy but in sunlight, wherever molecules meet and rearrange. Nothing stands apart. Every atom, every reaction, every transformation is part of a vast and silent order, the slow, patient work of the cosmos refining itself toward balance. The clockwork of the heavens long before telescopes and equations, humanity looked upward and saw perfection. The heavens appeared orderly while the earth below seemed restless. The sun rose and set with precision. The moon changed shape in steady cycles. The stars drifted predictably through the seasons, returning to the same places year after year. To early observers, this regularity felt divine. The sky was the realm of gods because it was the only thing that never faltered. Yet as the centuries passed, as mathematics replaced myth, it became clear that this order was not supernatural at all. It was mechanical, quiet, vast, and exact. The sky's movements are not chaos but choreography. Every planet, every moon, every grain of dust in orbit follows the same law: gravity. It is the universe's calmest force, constant, invisible, and endlessly patient. It does not command with violence, persuades through balance. It pulls gently at everything, everywhere, giving weight to worlds and shaping their paths. Because of gravity, planets move in curves instead of lines, falling endlessly around their stars without ever reaching them. For thousands of years, this truth was hidden behind illusion. The ancients believed Earth stood still at the center of creation, while the heavens revolved around it. To them, the sun's daily arc proved its motion. It was only in the quiet reasoning of astronomers like Copernicus, Kepler, and Galileo that the pattern was reversed. The Earth, they realized, was the traveler. The stars did not move, we did. This understanding changed not only science but perspective. Humanity was no longer the center of anything, only one participant in a vast, graceful system. Kepler, studying the paths of the planets, found that their orbits were not perfect circles but ellipses, slightly stretched, each moving faster when nearer the sun and slower when farther away. What looked like irregularity was actually precision. Every planet's speed, position, and curve could be described with exact numbers. The universe did not need correction or intervention. It was self-sustaining, balanced through geometry. This became the foundation of celestial mechanics, the study of how gravity binds the cosmos together. Isaac Newton expanded this understanding further, describing gravity as a universal law acting between all masses. The same force that pulled an apple to the ground kept the moon in its orbit. Suddenly, the heavens and the earth were no longer separate. The same rules applied to both. It was a quiet unification, a realization that everything from falling rain to spinning galaxies followed one principle. The cosmos became a clockwork not because it was rigid, but because it was consistent. Through the centuries, observation replaced imagination. Telescopes revealed that the sky was not a smooth sphere of light but a vast field of stars, each a sun in its own right. Some had their own planets, their own moons, their own systems of motion. The simplicity of the night sky gave way to abundance. Yet within that abundance, the same order persisted. Everywhere, gravity shaped paths, formed disks, gathered matter into spirals and spheres. The clockwork extended infinitely. Even chaos, when viewed at a grand enough scale, obeyed rhythm. Comets that appeared and vanished returned in regular intervals, following elongated orbits that carried them far from the sun and then back again. Asteroids spun and collided, yet their debris followed predictable paths. The Milky Way itself rotated, each star moving in an orbit defined by mass and distance. The universe, despite its enormity, behaved with a composure that defied imagination. The beauty of this order lies in its indifference. Gravity does not favor or discriminate. It acts the same on dust as on planets, on light as on stone. It shapes the grandest galaxies and the smallest ripples of space with the same invisible hand. This impartiality creates harmony. Worlds do not need supervision to move correctly. They follow the path their mass demands. The system is self-correcting, sustained by the very motion it governs. From Earth, we experience this cosmic balance as predictability. The tides rise and fall by the moon's pull. The length of a year measures one orbit around the sun. The angle of Earth's tilt gives us seasons. Every moment of daily life, every dawn, every twilight, is an expression of celestial mechanics. Even the sense of time itself is drawn from these movements. We measure years by orbits, days by rotation, seconds by the vibration of atoms, all variations of the same principle, repetition in motion. Science has revealed the vastness of this system, but its essence remains simple. A star's gravity pulls planets into orbit. Their inertia keeps them from falling in. This balance between attraction and motion defines everything that spins. From a grain of dust circling a star to an entire galaxy revolving around its center. The stability of this tension creates the illusion of stillness, though everything is always in motion. As understanding deepened, another truth emerged. Gravity not only binds objects but also shapes time itself. In Einstein's view, space and time are one fabric, curved by mass and energy. Planets move not because they are pulled by an unseen force, but because they follow the curves of space that massive objects create. A planet's orbit is the straightest possible path through a bent geometry. The clockwork of the heavens is not made of gears and wheels, but of curvature and flow. Even light, the fastest traveler, is not free from this influence. It bends slightly when passing near massive objects, curving around stars or disappearing behind black holes. The stars we see at night shine from positions slightly shifted by the warping of space. What we call starlight is not a straight message from its source, but a gently deflected whisper, reshaped by gravity's quiet guidance. In the modern age, we have learned to measure this clockwork precisely. We send spacecraft beyond planets, using gravity itself to accelerate them like stones in a sling. They travel on predictable paths, steered not by engines but by mathematics, the same geometry that keeps Earth turning and moons circling. Each movement is a confirmation of a truth first noticed by those who looked up in wonder. The universe does not stumble. It flows. To think of the cosmos in this way is not to reduce its mystery, but to deepen it. The fact that something so vast can be governed by such simple principles is itself astonishing. The planets, the stars, the galaxies, all move with silent coordination, a dance without music, endless and precise. Nothing directs it, yet nothing falls out of step. When you look at the night sky, the light you see has traveled across years, even centuries, to reach you. The stars seem fixed, but they are moving at immense speed, their paths woven into the galaxy's slow rotation. The constellations we recognize are temporary, their shapes shifting imperceptibly over millennia. Even the North Star, steady in the sky, is only a momentary alignment. Everything turns, everything drifts, yet the order remains. The clockwork of the heavens is not a machine but a rhythm, one that began with the first collapse of matter and continues through every rotation, orbit, and revolution. It needs no repair, no adjustment. It is perfect in its imperfection, infinite in its patience. And so, when night comes and the sky unfolds, the best way to understand it is not through numbers or names, but through stillness. The stars do not hurry. The planets do not compete. They simply move, each in its path, guided by gravity's quiet certainty. The universe keeps time without sound, turning endlessly, gently, and always on schedule. The birth of stars. In the beginning, there was darkness, not the absence of light, but the calm before illumination. Within vast clouds of gas and dust, invisible to the eye, the seeds of stars waited. These clouds drifted through space for millions of years, expanding, cooling, and condensing, until gravity began its patient work. Molecules of hydrogen, the simplest, most abundant element in the universe, started to gather. Slowly, they drew together under their own weight. The universe, silent and cold, began to form the first lights that would define its structure. Every star begins as a cloud. These clouds, called nebulae, are enormous, stretching for hundreds of light years, yet so diffuse that a handful of air contains more atoms than a cubic meter of nebular gas. Within them, small fluctuations in density trigger collapse. A ripple forms, pulling matter inward. Gravity strengthens as mass increases, and what was once an imperceptible drift becomes a slow implosion. The cloud folds into itself, growing warmer and denser, a cocoon of pressure and potential. As the collapse continues, the center forms a dense core. The temperature rises to millions of degrees, and atoms move so violently that collisions become frequent and powerful. When the heat is great enough, a transformation begins. Hydrogen nuclei, once separate, fuse into helium, releasing energy in the form of light and radiation. This moment, when fusion begins, marks the birth of a star. It is not an explosion but a balance. Gravity pulling inward, energy pushing outward. In that equilibrium, a new sun is born. From this balance comes stability. The young star shines not because it burns, but because it endures. The light we see is not fire, but fusion, a steady process that converts mass into energy at a controlled rate. In our own sun, this reaction converts 4 million tons of matter into pure energy every second. Yet it has done so for billions of years without pause. What seems violent is in fact patient. The star's calm brilliance is the most sustainable process in nature. Around newborn stars, the leftover material begins to organize. Dust and gas, caught in the pull of gravity, flatten into disks. Within these disks, particles collide, stick, and grow. Pebbles become rocks, rocks become planetesimals, and over millions of years, planets form. The same process that created the sun also built the Earth beneath our feet. The solar system is a family born from a single collapse, one event, one cloud, diversified into planets, moons, asteroids, and comets. Not all stars are the same. Some form in clusters, born from vast clouds that fragment into dozens or hundreds of smaller cores. Others form alone, isolated in the dark. The mass of the collapsing core determines its future. Small stars, known as red dwarfs, burn cool and slow, their lives stretching trillions of years, far longer than the universe has yet existed. Larger stars burn brighter and hotter but live short, magnificent lives, ending in collapse and explosion. The universe, even in its grandest moments, balances longevity and brilliance. The color of a star reveals its temperature. Blue stars are young and hot, white ones stable and mature, red ones older and cooler. Yet all follow the same internal process. Fusion at the core, radiation from the surface, gravity as the invisible frame that holds everything together. This quiet architecture repeats across the cosmos, unchanged and unstoppable. When astronomers study star-forming regions, they see more than beauty. They see time. The light from a distant nebula began its journey before human civilization existed. The glowing filaments and shadows captured by telescopes are ancient scenes, still unfolding. The Orion Nebula, visible even to the naked eye, is a stellar nursery, a place where thousands of stars are forming right now, each surrounded by its own orbiting material. The faint haze we see through the telescope is a living archive of creation, ongoing and eternal. Stars, once born, spend most of their lives in quiet repetition. They fuse hydrogen into helium, maintaining the delicate balance between inward gravity and outward pressure. This equilibrium defines the main sequence, the long middle age of a star's life. For billions of years, the process continues unchanged. The light never falters, the heat never cools. From the perspective of a human lifetime, the star seems immortal. Eventually, however, the fuel runs low. When hydrogen in the core is depleted, gravity begins to win. The star contracts, heating its outer layers, igniting new reactions in the shell around its heart. The outer atmosphere expands, turning the star into a red giant. In this phase, it swells to enormous size, its light softer but more encompassing. Our Sun, when it reaches this stage, will expand to engulf the inner planets, including Earth. Yet even this transformation will unfold slowly, over millions of years in silence. For the most massive stars, the end is more dramatic. When their fusion can no longer balance their weight, the core collapses under its own gravity. The implosion rebounds outward in a supernova, a single burst that can outshine entire galaxies for a brief moment. In that explosion, the star creates new elements, scattering them across space. Gold, silver, uranium, and other heavy atoms are born in this moment of death. From the ashes of one star, the building blocks of new worlds emerge. In the aftermath, the core may remain as a neutron star, a sphere no larger than a city but heavier than the sun, or collapse further into a black hole, where gravity becomes so strong that not even light can escape. These remnants, though invisible, continue to shape the cosmos, pulling on nearby stars, warping space, and sometimes merging in cataclysmic waves that ripple through space-time. Every star, whether it burns briefly or endures for ages, participates in this cycle of creation and return. The atoms forged in one generation of stars form the material for the next. The universe is thus a great, patient foundry, an unending process of light giving birth to matter, and matter giving birth to light. When you look at the night sky, you are seeing this process at every stage. Some stars are newborn, still wrapped in clouds of gas. Others are ancient, nearing their quiet end. Some have already died, their light still crossing the dark toward you, a final message from a vanished source. The sky is not a picture of the present but a timeline, each point of light a different chapter in the same endless story. The birth of stars is not a singular event, but an ongoing whisper of the cosmos, gravity, energy, and time working together in perfect balance. It is creation without noise, birth without chaos, change without haste. The stars do not hurry to shine. They form, they glow, and they fade, following the same law that governs all things: transformation in equilibrium. If you could listen to the universe, you would not hear fire or thunder. You would hear the slow hum of energy turning into form, the soft rhythm of fusion beginning, sustaining, and returning to silence. The light from those first stars still travels across the void, gentle and constant, illuminating not only space but the deep, patient nature of creation itself. The shape of the cosmos, the universe, has no edge, yet it is not infinite in the way we once imagined. It bends, it expands, it folds back upon itself in dimensions the mind can barely picture. To the eye, it seems flat and endless, a black canvas scattered with stars. But this appearance is only a thin surface of something deeper, a fabric stretched and curved by gravity, by motion, and by time itself. The cosmos, far from being empty, is shaped by the invisible. When early astronomers looked into the sky, they saw arrangement. The stars formed patterns, the planets followed paths, and the Milky Way arched across the heavens like a river of light. Yet for all its beauty, the universe appeared still. It took centuries of patient observation to reveal that the stars themselves were not fixed, but moving, that galaxies drifted apart, that the space between them was growing. The universe was not static. It was expanding. This discovery began quietly in the 1920s, when astronomers noticed that distant galaxies appeared redder than expected. The color shift, called redshift, meant that the galaxies were moving away. Their light stretched as space itself expanded. What this implied was profound. The universe had a beginning, and it was still growing. Every distant star, every cluster of galaxies, was part of this gentle but unstoppable outward flow. From this understanding came a new image of reality. The cosmos was not an explosion in space, but an expansion of space. The fabric of the universe itself stretches, carrying galaxies with it like dots on an inflating balloon. There is no center, no outside, and no edge, only the quiet unfolding of distance. Every point in space moves away from every other, not through motion, but through the stretching of the medium that contains them all. The structure of the universe, when seen through powerful telescopes, reveals a delicate web. Galaxies are not scattered randomly. They gather along filaments of dark matter, invisible structures that bind the cosmos together. Between these filaments lie vast voids, regions almost empty of matter. This pattern repeats on every scale, from clusters to superclusters, forming a cosmic lattice that extends for billions of light-years. From afar, it would resemble foam or lace, a universe woven from gravity and light. The reason it takes this shape lies in the earliest moments of time. After the Big Bang, the universe was a glowing sea of energy, almost uniform but not perfectly so. Tiny fluctuations in density, slight irregularities no larger than a whisper, grew under gravity's pull. Over billions of years, these ripples became galaxies and clusters, the scaffolding of the cosmos. The largest patterns in existence today are the fossilized traces of those first imperfections. The universe, even in its vastness, carries the memory of its birth. The expansion continues still. Each second, space grows larger. Galaxies drift farther apart, their light taking longer to reach us. In the far future, the expansion will stretch so greatly that distant galaxies will slip beyond visibility. Their light will never reach us again. The universe will appear emptier, though it is not truly so. It will simply have grown beyond the limits of observation, an ocean so vast that its farthest waves recede faster than light can travel. At the heart of this expansion lies a mystery scientists call dark energy, a name that describes not its nature, but our ignorance of it. It seems to act as a quiet pressure, pushing space apart faster and faster. Cannot be seen or touched, but its effect is measurable. It makes up nearly 70% of the universe, yet remains entirely elusive. The cosmos, for all its visible beauty, is mostly unseen. The stars, planets, and galaxies, everything we know, form less than 5% of all that exists. The rest is dark matter and dark energy, invisible but fundamental. Even the geometry of the universe depends on these hidden forces. If the total mass of matter and energy is great enough, the cosmos curves inward like a sphere. If it is too little, it curves outward like a saddle. Observations suggest something remarkable, that the universe is almost perfectly flat. This means the balance between gravity and expansion is exquisite, fine-tuned to a degree that seems improbable. A universe with just slightly more matter would have collapsed long ago. Slightly less, and it would have dispersed too quickly for stars to form. Yet here it is balanced, enduring, and quiet. On smaller scales, this balance creates the structures we can see. Galaxies spiral, stars cluster, and matter gathers into patterns that repeat throughout the cosmos. The same laws apply everywhere, from the smallest atom to the largest cluster of galaxies. The shape of the universe is not random, but rhythmic, a pattern built from repetition, guided by forces that never change. Light itself follows the contours of this cosmic geometry. As it travels through space, it bends around massive objects, creating illusions of duplication and distortion known as gravitational lenses. Sometimes a single galaxy can appear as multiple arcs or rings of light, formed by the bending of space-time itself. These cosmic mirages are not errors, but confirmations of the universe's curvature. Visible proof that space is not a void but a structure, flexible and alive. And yet, despite its immense complexity, the universe behaves with simplicity. The same equations that describe falling apples describe orbiting planets, spinning galaxies, and the bending of light. It is as if the entire cosmos is one vast, continuous system, following a handful of principles perfectly. This consistency gives it its quiet elegance, a harmony between motion and stillness, between the visible and the unseen. When we look into the night sky, we are not seeing the present. We are looking through layers of time. The light from nearby stars left only decades ago. The glow of distant galaxies began its journey billions of years before humans existed. The further we look, the younger the universe appears, until we reach the faint afterglow of the Big Bang itself, the cosmic microwave background, the oldest light in existence. It fills the universe uniformly, a soft echo of creation that hums quietly across all of space. In this faint radiation lies the shape of everything that came after. The slight variations in its temperature correspond to the seeds of galaxies, the fingerprints of the universe's first moments. To study that light is to look directly into the past, not through imagination, but through the evidence the cosmos left behind. The universe carries its history not in memory, but in pattern. Even as we map its structure and measure its expansion, the universe remains humbling in its scale. It has no center, no up or down, no boundary that can be reached. To travel far enough in one direction might one day bring you back to your starting point, just as walking around a sphere returns you to where you began. Space and time, interwoven and curved, make the cosmos both finite and without edge, a boundless completeness that holds everything within it. The shape of the cosmos, then, is not something to find but something to understand. It is the shape of motion balanced by gravity, of energy spread across distance, of time unfolding in every direction. It is the soft geometry of existence itself, curved, connected, and expanding forever. To stand beneath the night sky and gaze upward is to look into that shape. It is to feel the faint gravity of belonging not to a place but to a pattern. The stars are not above or beyond. They are within the same continuous fabric that holds us all. The universe is not something we live in. It is something we are. The death of light is the oldest traveler in existence. It has crossed the emptiness of space since the universe first cooled enough to let it move freely. Every ray, every flicker, is a message from some distant place and time. Yet even light, swift and tireless, is not eternal. It fades, it bends, it weakens, and eventually, it disappears into the long silence that waits for everything. The death of light is not sudden. It is the slow dimming of a universe growing old. When a star is born, it begins its life by making light. Fusion in its core releases energy that travels outward, bouncing from particle to particle, until it escapes into space. That light may journey for billions of years, untouched, crossing galaxies and voids, until it reaches a surface, a mirror, an eye. Each photon that touches your skin or your sight has traveled longer and farther than anything else you will ever know. It is a survivor of time. But light does not last forever because its sources do not. Stars die. When their fuel is spent, when the balance between gravity and energy breaks, their light begins to fail. Small stars cool into faint embers called white dwarfs, dense, hot remnants that glow for trillions of years before fading into blackness. Large stars end more dramatically, collapsing and exploding in supernovae, scattering their elements into space. For a brief moment, the light of a dying star can outshine its entire galaxy. But the brightness is temporary. The debris drifts outward, the glow weakens, and another patch of the sky goes dark. Even the most enduring sources of light, galaxies, clusters, quasars, will not shine forever. As the universe expands, light stretches. Its wavelength grows longer, its color shifts toward red, its energy diminishes. Eventually, the expansion will stretch that light so far that it becomes undetectable. The glow of galaxies will fade into invisibility, and the universe will become dimmer with each passing epoch. The cosmos is not burning out in violence, but cooling gently, like embers after a long fire. The process is already underway. The night sky we see is far brighter than what future observers will witness. Distant galaxies are already moving away so quickly that their light can no longer reach us. Every second, more of the universe slips beyond the horizon of visibility. Billions of years from now, an observer in the Milky Way will see only a few neighboring stars. All else will have faded into black. The universe, once filled with light, will appear empty again. This gradual fading is not a tragedy but a continuation of balance. Energy disperses. Heat moves from the hot to the cold. Light spreads until there is nowhere left to go. The second law of thermodynamics, the law of entropy, describes this inevitability. It is not destruction, but completion. The universe seeks equilibrium, and in doing so, it trades brilliance for calm. Every star that shines contributes to that spreading of energy, helping the cosmos cool toward rest. In the deep future, when all stars have died, the universe will enter an era of faint remnants. White dwarfs will fade into black dwarfs, neutron stars will cool into invisible spheres, and black holes will dominate the dark. Even they are not eternal. Over unimaginable spans of time, black holes will evaporate through a process called Hawking radiation, emitting faint particles until they vanish. The last traces of light will come from their slow dissolution. When that ends, the universe will reach its final stillness. This vision of the distant future, sometimes called heat death, is not an ending in the way we understand it. It is simply the point at which all energy has been evenly spread. There will be no gradients, no heat, no light, and no motion. The cosmos will be perfectly balanced, completely quiet. Time, as we experience it, will lose meaning because nothing will change. The universe will not stop existing. It will simply stop evolving. Yet even in that distant silence, something of light will remain. The photons released in the first moments of creation, the faint glow of the cosmic microwave background, will still drift, stretched to wavelengths too long for any eye to see. They will carry the final memory of brightness, the echo of everything that ever was. In that sense, light never truly dies. It only becomes too gentle to notice. To understand this is to find beauty in impermanence. The death of light is not the loss of warmth, but the completion of a cycle that began with it. The energy that once illuminated galaxies will continue to exist, dispersed evenly through space, woven into the quiet fabric of time. The stars that shone, the fires that burned, the eyes that watched, all will return to stillness, the same stillness from which they came. Even now, the universe is filled with ancient light. The starlight that reaches us tonight began its journey before the earth existed. When you look upward, you are seeing the past, the glow of suns long extinguished, their radiance arriving just now. The night sky is not a present moment but a memory, one that stretches across millions of years. Every photon that touches you has survived a journey no traveler could imagine, crossing silence to deliver a brief message. That once, somewhere, there was heat, motion, and life. In its fading, light teaches humility. Nothing endures in its brightest form. The stars will dim, the galaxies will drift, and even the atoms of the observer will one day fall back into the dark. But the story does not end there. It continues in transformation, energy becoming calm, movement becoming rest, brilliance becoming balance. The death of light is not a failure. It is the universe exhaling. When darkness finally fills the cosmos, it will not be the cold of absence, but the peace of completion. Everything that once burned, glowed, or lived will still exist, scattered and silent. The universe will not forget itself. It will rest. And in that rest lies a strange, profound beauty, that from a single burst of light came all things, and to that quiet it will one day return. The endless silence has always been the universe's first and final state. Long before there were stars, before there was heat, before even time could be measured, there was stillness. Not empty, not void, but potential waiting for form. The story of existence began with a single expansion, a moment of motion within that silence, and everything since has been the slow unfolding of that event. Every sound, every heartbeat, every ray of light has been a ripple through that ancient quiet, and in the distant future, when all motion fades and light itself dissolves, the universe will return to that original calm. Astronomers call it the end of time, but that phrase carries a kind of misunderstanding. Time will not stop as if by decision. It will simply lose meaning. When no stars shine, when no particles collide, when no processes remain to measure change, time will no longer have anything to mark. The universe will not end dramatically. It will not collapse or freeze suddenly. It will simply slow, gently, endlessly, until stillness becomes indistinguishable from permanence. In that far horizon, galaxies will have drifted so far apart that their light can never meet. Gravity will have weakened with distance, leaving each fragment of matter to float alone in expanding darkness. The great structures of the cosmos, clusters, galaxies, stars, will be scattered like embers that have cooled and vanished. The universe will be vast, quiet, and almost perfectly even. There will be no sound because sound requires air, and there will be no air. There will be no light because light will have stretched beyond perception. What remains will be invisible, a sea of faint particles gliding slowly toward infinite separation. And yet, even in that state, the universe will still exist. The laws that guided its birth will continue to operate, silent but unwavering. Atoms will drift, decay, and reassemble in new forms. The faintest traces of radiation will hum through space, like a memory too quiet to disturb the dark. This is not nothingness. It is the final expression of everything, the complete diffusion of energy, the total equilibrium of motion and rest. The silence of that future will not be the silence of absence, but of completion. Every transformation will have run its course. Every light will have spent itself in generosity. Every element will have returned to balance. The universe will not mourn its brightness. It will have fulfilled it. The story of creation is not one of endless growth, but of cycles. Expansion, illumination, dispersal, and rest. In that last phase, the cosmos will simply be without need for change. If a consciousness could exist then, a single observer in the infinite dark, it would not see emptiness. It would see total symmetry. The quiet would not be cold or lonely, but absolute. There would be no distinction between here and there, before and after. Everything that once moved will have come to rest, every vibration absorbed into equilibrium. The silence will not echo, it will simply hold. In this sense, the end of the universe is not a tragedy but a return. The same silence that preceded creation will follow it. The difference is that now it will carry memory, the record of stars that burned, of galaxies that turned, of life that thought and wondered. Nothing truly vanishes, it only changes state. The atoms that once formed bodies, oceans, and planets will remain, their energy spread across the vastness. The universe will rest, but it will not forget. The human mind, which lives by contrast, light and dark, sound and quiet, birth and death, struggles to imagine a silence without boundaries. Yet that silence is the foundation of everything we know. It is the pause that allowed creation to begin, the background against which every sound and color gained meaning. To exist within it would not be punishment but completion. The cosmos began in motion. It will end in peace. Even now, traces of that final quiet exist. Between stars, between galaxies, there are regions of deep, untouched stillness. Radio telescopes listen to these spaces and hear almost nothing. Only the faint hiss of background radiation, the cooling residue of creation's first light. That sound, if it can be called that, is the whisper of eternity itself, neither beginning nor ending, just continuity. It is the closest we can come to hearing the shape of the infinite. In meditation, in rest, in the moments before sleep, there is an echo of that same stillness. When thought slows, when breath softens, the boundaries of time and self blur. The body continues, but awareness floats free of motion. This quiet does not belong only to the distant future. It exists within us, as a small reflection of the universe's greater calm. Every silence we enter is a return to that cosmic origin, a rehearsal for the peace the universe itself is moving toward. The endless silence to come will not be dark in the way we fear darkness. It will be clear, pure, and infinite, filled not with loss but with rest. The energy that once moved the stars will be evenly spread, and no part of existence will be higher or lower than another. The universe will no longer reach outward. It will simply exist, vast, balanced, and eternal. To imagine this is not to despair, but to understand that every flicker of light, every sound, every life is part of a greater rhythm. Nothing is wasted. Every atom that has ever been will continue, transformed and transformed again, until even transformation ceases to matter. The universe will sleep, but it will do so in peace. And perhaps that is its true purpose. Not endless motion, but the long journey toward perfect stillness. The endless silence is not an ending. It is the soundless continuation of everything that ever was, the final note of a song too vast to hear, fading gently into peace. The story of the universe, from the first flicker of light to the last whisper of silence, is not one of triumph or tragedy. It is a story of patience, of motion becoming stillness, of chaos finding balance, of everything returning gently to where it began. Science, in its quiet way, has not stripped the world of mystery. It has deepened it. For the more we learn about what exists, the more we realize how much rests beyond sight, not in shadow but in calm. We began with questions that seemed enormous. What is matter? What is life? What is light? Each answer led not to finality but to rhythm, to the understanding that everything, from the smallest atom to the largest galaxy, moves by the same rules. Creation and dissolution are not opposites. They are partners in a single, endless process. The same fire that gives life also shapes stone, warms oceans, and lights stars. The same silence that follows the death of light holds the memory of all that was bright. In every part of the cosmos, there is repetition without monotony, waves, orbits, pulses, breaths. These are not accidents. They are the language of existence. When you listen closely, you can sense that rhythm in everything, in wind passing through trees, in the beating of your heart, in the soft ticking of time itself. The laws that govern galaxies are the same that guide the rise and fall of your breath. The universe is not separate from you. You are one of its quiet expressions. The mysteries that science has explained are not the end of wonder. They are the beginning of understanding. To know that rainbows form from light and water does not make them less beautiful. To know that stars are born of gravity and fusion does not make them less miraculous. It only reveals that beauty and order were always intertwined, that calm is not the absence of meaning, but the essence of it. Somewhere, far beyond sight, new stars are forming. Somewhere, others are fading into dust. On worlds we will never see, oceans may rise and fall under alien suns. Every corner of existence is engaged in the same quiet transformation, the same unending cycle of birth and return. The universe, though vast and indifferent, carries a kind of grace in its constancy, an eternal balance between motion and stillness, between energy and peace. And here, on this small planet adrift in space, that same balance continues. The air moves, the oceans turn, the seasons change, and life endures. The atoms within you were once part of stars, and one day they will drift back into the sky. Nothing is lost. Nothing is truly gone. Everything continues in new form, endlessly rearranged by time. As the light of the universe travels onward, growing softer, more diffuse, it does not vanish. It only stretches into quiet. Perhaps, in that endless calm, the universe will not be empty, but full of everything that ever existed, blended into one infinite stillness. And if there is meaning to be found in this, it is simple, that even the smallest life, the faintest thought, the most fleeting light is part of something vast and whole. The same silence that awaits the stars awaits us all, not as an ending, but as a return to peace. So the story ends where it began, in quiet, in balance, in wonder. The universe exhales, and in its breath, we find our place. Everything that was bright will rest, and everything that rests will belong to the same still, eternal harmony. The mysteries are not gone. They have only fallen asleep.